The coronation? Nah, that's not the biggest event in London this year. It's Cardinals Cubs. So naturally, we're going to talk Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, why would they give me a lower third that says Sully? I'm an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for the last decade. I've been at the Locked On Podcast Network for the last 5 full seasons. And today we are doing a crossover. We are crossing over not just across the continent, but across the pond all the way to the United Kingdom, where we have our special guest today. Mystery guest, sign in, please.
Sully, how's it going?
It's going great. That sounds exactly like Peter Pratt,
It is
the host of Locked On Marlins. What a wild coincidence.
This is so coincidental. This is like it was planned. It's like as soon as MLB started getting games in London, they were like, maybe we should get a host of one of the pods based out there. Maybe we should do that.
That's true. Well, hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I have to tell you, today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB, and they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. You can follow me at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast, and Instagram. Peter Pratt, you got 8 seconds to tell us who you are or where to follow you.
At Miami Marlins _UK on Twitter, guys. That is the main spot. And listen, if you want to be following this London series story, follow me on there. There's going to be so much content. I'm at both the games this weekend. Looking forward to that. There's going to be a lot of hydration involved during these games. You got to stay hydrated.
Oh, you're going to be hydrated. It's a lot of water you're going to be drinking.
It's brown water, fizzy brown water.
Fizzy brown water. Yes, I don't think he's talking about a Diet Coke or a Tab. Back in 2019, the Red Sox and the Yankees played a pair of games. My dear friend Marcel from Zurich, who goes to as many baseball games as humanly possible, managed to go there. I think Mark Blakemore, a couple other followers of the podcast were there. Members of the British Baseball Alliance were all there. You know, it was a fun time, except if you're a Red Sox fan, because evidently the games were being played in zero gravity, and I think the final score was 48-47. It didn't quite feel like baseball. It felt like bumper pool or something. I don't know what the hell was going on. And that was, of course, the year before the pandemic. Some things have happened since then, but I remember the excitement for the London series seemed off the charts and everything like that. Now we're here 2023. We got another great rivalry. We got the Cubs and the Cardinals are going to be playing. It's 2 games, right? They're playing 2 games in London. And is it now I'm going to throw it to you because you are going to be attending the games. All right. Okay. So as he said, check out Locked On Marlins for a recap. I wanted to get you on beforehand because I know you'd be too hungover to do a podcast. I'm going to call it. You see it. Okay. You're there. You're in England, right? You're in England right now. You're not in London yet because you're going to be in London tomorrow morning. Tell me a little bit about the how it's being built up there and just the general vibe of Major League Baseball coming back. And is it at Wembley? Is that where is it being played? The games itself being played.
All right, let's start there. Where's this ballpark that they've created? It isn't Wembley. It's in the London Stadium, which is West Ham United football stadium, the old Olympic stadium that they built after the Olympics. So it's there. It's the same location as it was back in 2019. And
Forgive my ignorance. I mainly know Wembley from Live Aid.
Exactly. There's a lot of stadiums in London.
Live Aid.
Exactly. So London Stadium, and they've adjusted the dimensions a touch this year as well, and some of the seating and foul areas. I believe that they were a bit too sparse last time, it was looking a bit too big out there in foul territory. So I think they have tweaked some of the adjustments as well. Like to your point, that Red Sox-Yankees series, it was a high-scoring affair, I think, is one assessment. I went with my wife in that first, for both games, but we sat there in game 1, and that first inning, I think itself went over like 90 minutes or something crazy for the whole first inning. She turned to me and said, "Pete, how many innings are there? I had to tell her there was 9, and she nearly left the stadium there and then. It was just too much, and it was, it was a wild situation. But the buzz around that game was huge. I would say like the Yankees Red Sox for me was like the ultimate rivalry, the ultimate matchup to bring as the first one. They did that perfectly.
And remember, folks, in 2019, the Red Sox were the defending World Series champions, and the two had faced each other in the playoffs. But the Yankees were a demonstrably better team than the Red Sox were in 2019. So there was the Red Sox-Yankee rivalry wasn't like it was in 03, 04, and 05, where it was at a fever pitch, but it was still pretty intense. It was a pretty intense rematch right there.
Yeah, for sure. It was, and there was what I'd say from going to both those games too. There was a lot of Yankees and Red Sox fans that had traveled. A lot of Americans over in the ballpark. Where I was sat, I was like in kind of center field area on the first game, and it was pretty much all Americans there actually, which I thought was excellent because you had a blend of like British guys, people like me that like follow the game, know what's happening, but obviously are UK based. Then there was a load of like US fans that had traveled over. Then there was sprinkled in a few like UK guys that had no idea what was happening and were just happy to be there and experience baseball for the first time. So it was a great vibe that first time around. Obviously, this series was planned. The Cardinals Cubs was planned to be in 2020. So that was always the plan. Then obviously the pandemic hit, and that was the end of that plan. They push it back, and we finally get Cubs Cardinals. What I'd say just on that point, Cubs Cardinals does not have the same draw, and it's not the same names that the Yankees or the Red Sox have. So that's the first thing I'd say. However, one thing that's really different this time around is MLB Europe, etc. have put loads of effort into creating more ancillary stuff around London. So you've got this big event happening right now as we're recording this on Friday evening UK time, happening in Trafalgar Square, where they converted Trafalgar Square into a glorified batting cage.
I saw that. I think you may have posted that, but I saw that online.
Exactly. So MLB and MLB Europe have gone big on the surrounding stuff and trying to get things into the center of London, because London Stadium is quite a bit out of London, Stratford area, which is a decent trek away. So they've really just put in a big event space into Trafalgar Square. And for me, that's crucial, right? Like half the battle in the UK is trying to get people to just fall into baseball, discover it somehow. And what better way to discover it than walking home on a Friday evening and there's a batting cage in the middle of Trafalgar Square, music being played, beers being served. You think, what the hell's this?
It's funny. Maybe. I went to London in 2016 that was last time. And sorry I didn't stop by to see you, but I didn't know you existed. And I wound up meeting a couple of blokes who were big baseball fans there, including some of the members of the British. There's like a league in London. I met some of the people there and some of the players there. And I also just met some sports fans, and a lot of them were primarily Premier League fans or rugby fans, but they were also baseball fans, and they followed it online. And I discovered that and you and I talked about this on a previous episode, but it struck me that there were a lot of fans of the Boston and New York teams. I think because there's a connection. It's the closest cities physically. There is also a lot of cross-pollination between New York and London. It seemed like more Londoners that I met adopted the Mets as opposed to the Yankees because they want to adopt a New York team, but they're too insecure to adopt the winning team.
Yeah,
there's something very British about that, I think.
It is. We love an underdog. We do.
Yeah. But I did meet my share of Yankee fans there. It struck me that there were already a lot of New York fans in London that made that matchup make the most sense. It's funny because the internet, you've seen there are people who are baseball fans are growing in Europe. Same way there's Premier League fans in the United States. I think also the success of Ted Lasso had something to do with that. Yeah. But you're meeting people who are like, oh, I like Arsenal, I like Manchester City, or that they're talking as if they grew up in Manchester, like they were a Peaky Blinder or something. Yeah. I'm going to throw as many pop culture references out there as I can, but Yeah, it is interesting because the Cubs and the Cardinals are such a Midwest
Yeah.
rivalry. It's the center of the country, and I don't get the sense there is as much cross pollination. If you're going to do a Tokyo series, you would have to have it be Giants versus the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of cross pollination between the West Coast and Japan.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely playing through. More generally, I'd say there's more Cubs vibes than there is Cardinals vibes. Is what I'm kind of picking up with.
Mm-hmm.
The fan bases that have been there today at the batting practice day and just generally around seems to be a bit more Cubs, which kind of, I guess, makes sense. Like Chicago again is a bit of a destination city,
Right.
perhaps for UK. With St. Louis,
More than St. Louis?
Probably not. I have to hold my hands up. I've been to St. Louis, and it was the first ever ball game I went to was the Cardinals. So there you go. But they weren't. They were too good for me. I needed the Marlins. That's the team I wanted to follow. I need an up and comer.
Well, hey, I have a couple of thoughts going on, and in segment 2, I have a few other thoughts about the rise of baseball popularity and why I think it was imperative to have a London series this year. Hey, let's talk a little bit about our sponsor for today. Where is it, please? Where don't we have a lower third? Why, indeed, we do, Mr. Sullivan. It's called FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is the official betting place for Major League Baseball, as we're talking baseball right now. Baseball's in full swing, and there's no better place to get in the action than FanDuel. That's America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet, say that 3 times fast, up to $1,000. How many is that in pounds? Do you know?
It's probably 1 for 1 these days. That's
I know, 1 for
problem.
none. Exactly. It used to be harder to convert. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to join today. Don't miss your chance to snag a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. And if you're going to bet on the London series, bet on the over. When you get to FanDuel today, just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel is the official partner of Major League Baseball. In case you're wondering, Major League Baseball trademarks are used with permission. Fancy new graphics here with Peter Pratt. I know.
Stunning.
It's stunning stuff. Hey, I actually wasn't going to bring this up, but it is interesting that we had this is by far the most successful World Baseball Classic we've ever had. At least in America, it was always perceived as extended spring training. And I always kind of poo-pooed it. And we're trying to make the World Cup, but it's not going to matter. And I got super into the games, and other people got super, and other countries got super into. And for the first time, I think things started to click. There were fine games beforehand, but you always got the sense that the major leaguers were going half speed, which of course goes against all, competitive logic. And I didn't get that sense this year. And coming off the success of the World Baseball Classic from this spring, I think it was imperative that they had a real major league game, not an exhibition, but a real major league game or a series of them in Europe, because in so many ways that's not the last frontier, but that's certainly the big frontier that baseball wants to have in terms of not just player involvement, but also money. So what was the response to the World Baseball Classic in there, and has it carried over in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, so the WBC, obviously GB had a team, so they made it, and that added a lot of spice and a lot of interest, I'd say, from what I would describe as the diehard fans in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
They were carrying the games on some more general TV channels as well, so you could find it. Naturally, it's not easy to find because the time zone differences makes it tricky, but there was definitely, it was a low level of interest in the kind of general population, I describe it as. But obviously then GB didn't finish last. They in their group, they won a game. And thus exceeded expectations and have already automatically qualified for the next one. So what you then start to get is some articles in, the BBC and, other mainstream media saying, hey, GB's baseball just went and hung it with the US. And all of a sudden, like, you start to get a bit of traction going. And so, hopefully people found and discovered baseball in that way, because boy, oh boy, to your point though, Sully, like, what a tournament and what a showcase.
It was great.
The vibe is unreal. The vibe is unreal in the WBC. It's unmatched, to be honest with you. And, I'm looking forward to the next one immediately.
I have, there are two things that I think will help improve the interests of baseball. Let's just stick with the UK because I have you on the phone. There are two things. First of all, and if I were a major league scout, I'd be doing this. You got to get a major leaguer to come on from Great Britain.
Yeah.
Someone's got to come out. Just like if I were the Red Sox, I would be spending all the money in the world to find an Irish player.
Yeah.
To get one Irish player. And yes, everyone, my name's Sullivan. I know that Ireland and the UK are not synonymous. Okay. Don't send me any angry tweets. But if there is a player from County Cork, born and raised, who you could send to the Red Sox and they have, O'Shaughnessy on their back, or whatever it is, and spelled in the weird way, because Sullivan in Ireland is spelled with a B. I'm not kidding.
There you go.
There's a BH in the middle of it. I don't know why.
Gaelic vibes. It's the Gaelic version.
You have a real sort of one of those completely unpronounceable Gaelic names in the back.
That's what we need.
On a Red Sox uniform,
yeah.
You'd be able to print money. Like, you wouldn't, those shirts would just come flying off the shelf.
Yeah.
If you had a British-born player make it, and I'm not talking about born on an Air Force base and grew up in Oklahoma. I'm talking about born and raised in freaking Leeds or whatever.
Yeah.
And coming up and having them just be, mowing them down or getting big home runs. Just have that big, that focus, I think, would do a lot. But then there's also what I call the Marvel Harry Potter model. If you went back 20, 30 years ago, the idea of something like obscure Marvel comics like Iron Man or Black Panther becoming massive big hits, or people lining up to see a Lord of the Rings film, people would have looked at you like you're insane. Those are just for nerds. That's a little niche market. That's why they didn't make those films for so long. And one of the reasons why those films and everything, and don't worry, it gets back to baseball. One reason why these films became so huge is they focused on the crazed fans who wanted to be involved in it. And that crazed, the snowballing, that crazed fans, more people wanted to be involved in that community or involved in that experience, a shared experience. And instead of taking the fans for granted, they focused on what the fans wanted. And more people were like, oh, I want to see what happens to the Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or Iron Man or whatever. And then it just sort of ballooned to something we couldn't imagine. Baseball has that chance to do that kind of a fan base. And so, like you were mentioning with Trafalgar Square, I said, yeah, that's perfect. Get people, not only that, but focus on the crazed fans who are enjoying this communal experience. We just had a couple of years of no communal experience, of being separated from each other. And now let's have something that we're all get together, have fun, but also get into and get emotional behind it. Yep. And I think those communal experiences, whether it's, a Star Wars film, or the Marvel movies did it perfectly, or whether it's a TV show, or, whatever it is, and to be part of that craziness fan base, I think that's what, this series in London, what you said with Trafalgar Square, has to cultivate, to create the fandom to go through in the UK.
Yeah, I'm with you. To be honest with you, baseball's kind of got the blueprint laid down, because the NFL is 15, 20 years ahead of it, right? Where
it usually is.
Yeah, exactly. Right. They're very good at marketing their game. I think that's one of the things that the NFL has been great at, and one of the things that MLB has kind of lagged behind in, and they're trying to catch up. And they've seen the blueprint, the success that the NFL's had in in the UK, and it's a resounding success. I've been to so many of those games over the years, and it's packed out year after year after year after year. And the knowledge around just any folk now, you just walk and say NFL, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I follow the Patriots," or "I follow whatever." It's like crazy. Baseball is not in that situation here at this point. It is so niche right now, but they have the opportunity. The opportunity sits there in front of them. That's the point you're saying. There's a hardcore fan base. They can lean into that, be creative, throw money at it, and keep the trickle feed coming year after year, send in some sexy matchups. The opportunity sits there for Major League Baseball. And the opportunity sits there for us as UK sporting consumers. Because once they see it and they enjoy it, they'll be thankful. They'll be like, wow, I didn't even know baseball existed, but now I'm so glad I've discovered this. I'm all in. So win-win, I'd say.
And being part of that community, I think, is one of the reasons that the Premier League is getting more and more popular in America.
Yeah.
It's not just, we can watch soccer here. We can watch the Major League Soccer and the LA this or the San Jose that's, but we know that's minor league soccer. We know if they're not going to, you're not going to. The San Jose Earthquakes play right down the street from where I am at right now. Yeah. If you're one of the best players in the world, are you going to play for the Premier League, or would you be throwing your name to like AC Milan or Real Madrid, or are you going to play for the San Jose Earthquakes?
It probably depends on your age, is the likely
answer. That's probably true. But if you're like an elite player, you want to play in amongst the elites. It's like the same in baseball. If you're an elite player, Shohei did everything he could in Japan, and I said, no, I want to play on the biggest stage. And so I think knowing you're watching the best. That's why the Olympics, you'll watch the best curlers, you watch the best pole vaulters. There's no big pole vaulting league, but you want to see the best at it. There's no locked-on pole vault.
I mean, there's a market.
Although I want to throw my name into the hat.
Let's go.
Let's go. Welcome to Locked-On Pole Vault. We talk about pole vaulting all year long. Yeah, we're sponsored by Birddogs. But yeah, I think they have to do that, and I think. Yeah. Pointing out what they're doing in Trafalgar Square. I mean, I'm all for growing the game of baseball, and I'm all and I found that when people get into any sport, it's not about just the sport itself. It's about being part of that community and being part of that collective fandom, which is why I equate it to The Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or some of the Marvel films, which again, 20 years ago, if you came up to me and said, like, or maybe 25 years ago, you would say, like, these were the most popular movies? What, are you kidding me? It's like, no, yeah, that's the case. That's the case. And baseball, you know what? They gotta take a page out of Hogwarts.
There you go. I think that is the key, though. Like that, finding it isn't just about baseball itself. When you take it to the next level, it's when you find the team to follow. And then when you find the team to follow, then you find the fan base that comes with that team. Then you start engaging. And for me, that's been the best thing about becoming a Marlins fan and via Twitter, being able to connect with other people via Twitter. It's the community. I pretty much spend all of my days chatting away to people on Twitter that are Marlins fans, and we just have fun. Yep. And that's it. You have to have your team. You have to nail get the colors down. Because that takes it to the next level, which is kind of, makes it an interesting viewing experience for me and a lot of the fans there when the Cubs and Cardinals play, right? No skin in the game. But for me, it's actually the main skin in the game is being able to be around all of the fans that you maybe talk with on Twitter or text or whatever, but to actually get together while there's baseball happening, it's a great experience for us UK fans for sure.
We're with Peter Pratt and a bunch of fancy new graphics here. I'd be, seeing that I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. You are where now? What town are you in right now? You're still in Slough. You're still in. You're still in Leeds. You're still in
Leeds.
Still in Leeds.
Exactly.
You'll be in London tomorrow, and you'll be. If you're watching the game, Peter will be the one drinking alcohol at the stadium.
The one. I think.
The one. Let's talk a little Marlins though, because on the game on Thursday, the Marlins took a gigantic dagger and stuck it in the heart of the poor Pittsburgh Pirates, who sorry, Ethan Smith of Locked On Pirates, but man, the Pirates have just done a wily coyote, dropping their last 10 games. And the Pirates were in control at one point, and it was Cooper hit the home run last night, right? And wait, who was the starting pitcher? Was it Braxton, right?
Braxy, yeah.
Okay. That was yesterday. It seemed like a long time ago. But Cooper hit the huge 3-run home run, give the Marlins the lead. And with that, the Marlins, who, let the record show, I picked to be a playoff team at the beginning of the year. Now it's funny. One of the reasons why I picked them to be a playoff team was because of the success of Sandy Alcantara. And if you had told me at the beginning of the year that we're almost in July, and I know it's always a touchy point to bring up early July with anyone from Britain, because then we get to the 4th, and then all of a sudden you don't want to talk to Peter that day.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Notice I didn't bring up Hamilton when I talked about things that became huge fan bases, but don't want to rub in your face. But if you told me that we're almost in July and the Marlins are they're not on the fringe of the playoffs, they have the best record of any of the wild card teams. And while I don't think they're going to catch the Braves, I think the Braves are just might be the most complete team in baseball right now. The Marlins aren't going to make it a runaway. They're going to be the way they're playing, they're going to be a mid-90 win team and host one of the wild card series. If you told me all of that, I would have assumed Sandy Alcantara's on pace to win 30 games with an ERA under 1. Instead, it's over 5. And how are they doing this without him?
Sully, I don't know. I'm amazed that they are. To your point, like, you'd look at this and go, if the Marlins are 10 over 500 heading into July, you would assume Sandy Alcantara is having another Cy Young campaign, and you'd assume that Jazz Chisholm Jr. is on a 40-40 pace.
Nope.
Neither of those are true.
No.
Sandy, on Locked On Marlins this week, I've been asking that question and thinking about that question specifically, like what's happened with Sandy. And I think it's hard to pinpoint what it is, because for me, there was a multitude of rule changes, all that happened at the same time with the pitch clock, the shift, etc. But fundamentally, Sandy's a ground ball pitcher, right? So there's going to be a shift impact that Sandy would feel. The pitch clock is new too. So because of these things all happening at the same time, it's hard to work out which one is it. Is it any of them? Is it something else? I just think, and we've seen it across the league, right? Where how many stud pitchers, even last year's stud pitchers, have like completely just dropped off hugely.
Alek Manoah was a Cy Young candidate for Toronto last year. In fact, he would have been who I voted for the Cy Young, and he got sent down to the minors to get his stuff together.
It's crazy. So for the Marlins to be doing this with Sandy going the way he has been, I think it's a wild situation. But you mentioned him yesterday, like guys like Braxton Garrett. Let's rewind the clock a bit here. Braxton started in the bullpen. He started the year as the long man out of the pen, and now Braxy's striking out 13 guys, getting into the 7th inning in less than 90 pitches. Unbelievable from Braxton Garrett.
Well, there are two names, obviously. Like, there was a period where I think Jorge Soler was on pace to hit 400 home runs at one point. He just, like, every time he came up, he just launched another one. But let's get down to brass tacks right now. Making a tremendous case for National League Most Valuable Player is Arise.
Unbelievable.
He's doing exactly why I was in favor of that trade, and why I was in favor of that trade actually for both sides. The Twins did have good hitters. They did need to have a professional starting pitcher in their rotation, and they gave up last year's batting champion. The Marlins had good pitching. Obviously, Alcantara pitches so well. That's like having two pitchers. And they needed to have, and you and I talked about this in the offseason, they needed to have just a person who wasn't an out in
Yeah.
that lineup. Just when people say, what position is he going to play? He's going to play the position of a guy who gets a hit. That's his position. We'll find him a position. Just there were too many automatic outs in that lineup, and you need to have some say, well, this guy's not an automatic out. And just having that guy to get a hit when you need it, whether it's to start an inning or to keep an inning going. You've seen how many times has there been highlights of a Marlin win this year where Arise is smack dab in the middle of it. Not just the fact because he's flirting with 400, whether he gets 400 or not. That's not the point. The point is that the rallies keep going. Rallies don't die when he shows up, and they do have decent pitching. And so just a hit here or there, extra hit here or there. We saw that last year. If they had an extra hit here or there, they would have been a lot closer to 500, maybe gone above 500. Which is why I think that's that trade, which has worked out well for both sides. But I think it's worked out exceptionally well for Miami.
I'm completely with you. It's just exactly what they needed, right? And I'd say with Arias in general, I hadn't watched a lot of him before, as I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't watch many Twins games. But this is the funny thing, you get into this discourse now about, Arias, he could hit 400. Could he be in the MVP conversation? And naturally, a lot of relatively unsettled Braves fans are saying, of course not. He hits singles and singles only, or they go and look up his Baseball Savant page. What I'd say is Luis Arias, you have to watch the dude hit because he hits like no one else. It is, I've been blown away by it. He's just incredible as a hitter, and he will hit it anywhere where he wants to. He hits it where he wants, and it is glorious to watch. First Marlins cycle in history. He had 5 hit games, 2 of them in the space of 3 days, I think, or something crazy. Insane, Arias.
I thought it was a typo when I saw it was 5. He 5 hit there.
Unbelievable.
And think about those, how many times those are in the middle of a rally.
This is
how many times that he's sort of like there's a guy on and he gets a hit. So therefore he keeps the carousel running. Or that there's someone on base when Soler comes up. And it just puts the other team back on their heels. I don't understand how one could possibly not include him in the conversation. Of course, Acuna Jr. is having a phenomenal season. I think Acuna Jr. right now, he is the front runner to win the National League MVP. But the fact that the Marlins are this good and they're not getting a stud performance from their Cy Young winner, that means someone else has picked up the slack. Who could that have been?
Well, the storyline coming now. Yuri Perez, mate, is...
Oh, he's been phenomenal. He's been all you could ask for.
Unbelievable. I mean, to do what he's doing at 20?
Yeah.
20 years old, Yuri. It kind of slipped under the radar a touch because Ellie De La Cruz kind of arrived, and that was the big buzz across Major League Baseball.
The other De La Cruz.
Not the other De La Cruz, exactly. Not Brian De La Cruz.
No.
It did kind of trend a little bit under the radar, and then all of a sudden, it's kind of latched on. Everyone's going, oh, hold on a minute. Yuri Perez is doing this, a sub-2 ERA. That kind of he's delivering Sandy Alcantara type numbers at 20. Yeah. It's unbelievable. Problem is for the Marlins, and this is the problem now, he's going to go max 120 innings, and so they need to manage him carefully and work out when do they use these bullets, because they want to be in the playoff hunt, but when they get there, they also are going to need Yuri Perez probably as well. So this is a fine line for them at the point, and it's like, what do they do at the deadline? Do they go and add an arm, maybe?
Well, that's why I want to ask you, what do you think they should... I'll tell you what I think they should do. I think that they should add a starting pitcher and use Perez as kind of like, give us 3 innings here, give us 3 innings there as a weapon. Earl Weaver used to do that with young pitchers with the Orioles in the late 60s, early 70s. His big prospects would come out, he'd put them right in the bullpen.
Yeah.
And he would build them up. Now, if you know you're only going to get 120 innings out of him, don't make the mistake that the Nationals made in 2012 by putting the cap on Steven Strasburg to the point where they took him off the playoff roster, even though he was one of their best starting pitchers.
Yeah.
And their starting pitchers were terrible in the series against the Cardinals, and they fell apart in that final game because the bullpen was gassed. If you say, okay, we got 120 innings we're going to get out of him, and if we sort of say, hey, you're going to work these 2 games this week. You're going to give us 3 innings here, 3 innings there. And in that game, you have 3 dominant innings from your dynamite pitcher.
Yep.
I think that way when you get to the if they get to the best of 3 wild card series, you still have him as a weapon, and he's used to being able to not necessarily start, but give you those 3 innings in the middle of a game. I think that, or at least get through the lineup once. You go, get through them, hopefully 3 perfect innings, and then you move on.
Nice.
So
I'm
I mean, yeah, I think they should. I think it would behoove them to pick up an arm that would automatically give him some bullpen depth.
I like the thinking around Eury Perez just managing his innings, and if they do go down that path, which they have to make a call on him, if they go down that path, it starts to then hinge on where are they feeling with Johnny Cueto, who's pitched 1 inning thus far. Where are they feeling with Trevor Rogers? He was coming back. He's hurt himself again. He's in no-throw mode at the moment. So that, to me, with kind of 5 weeks to the deadline, is saying, we can't rely on Johnny Cueto or Trevor Rogers at this point for innings. So with that being said,
they're total bonuses at this point.
Bonus balls on those boys. So that means if they need to change something with Eury Perez, then they have to go and get an arm. They have to, because they're going to run out of arms. And all of a sudden, what looks to be a really promising season could fall away because you lose innings. You don't have enough quality innings coming out of the starting rotation, which sounds wild for the Marlins to be saying because they're built on the arms, but they're dealing with injuries, as everyone does. But it would be a catastrophe for the Marlins to not address something which is clear and obvious for all of us to see at this point, that they're going to need more innings out of some good quality innings out of some starters here.
And to do it sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. You have to.
By the way, the ultimate trade they could make that the Marlin fans have to hope they make, that they trade this year's Sandy Alcantara and get back last year's Sandy Alcantara.
I mean,
Alcantara can get his crap together at do the second half of the season.
I think he will, I think
and that'd be like making a trade.
Yeah, it would. It definitely would. You've still had innings out of Sandy though as well. It's just
true.
You get the one blow up inning, which is the wild and infuriating thing. That was the start this week, right? 7 innings, and you think, great, 7 innings, but 1 5-run inning early in the game. The rest of it was almost perfection. So Sandy's going to click. I'm convinced of it. But with Cueto down, with Rogers down, and Eury Perez being managed, they have to find a way to add more into this rotation so they can play around with Eury Perez. They have to, because, and to your point, the other 2 guys, Cueto and Rogers, they're bonus situations for the Marlins at this point. They've got to do it.
Well, you're a bonus situation with us. We're running out of time here. Peter Pratt, you're going to be at the London series. Tell us people where they can follow you.
Absolutely. I'm at the London series all weekend, guys. I'm always on Twitter too. So hit me up at Miami Marlins _UK on Twitter. And of course, follow me on Locked On Marlins, daily pods as well, like this one. So hit me over there.
And you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about London, the London series, expanding the game in the UK, and a little Marlins talk too with Peter Pratt of Locked On Marlins. This has been Locked On MLB, Locked On Marlins crossover. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.